Today, we are going to make some grass. No, I'm not in Colorado, so it's not going to be that kind of grass. It's our techniques that are so simple and sensible, your mothers have practically built themselves. Hello folks, it's Mad Dog Merv. Today I'm on my way to the site of an old school in Salt Lake City that used to sit on the corner of North Temple and on State Street. And the school was called Lafeyette. Now, you'll see from the pictures an absolutely grand structure. It had a very interesting history, and well, this time of year, because it's cold and it's freezing outside, I felt it was a good time to tell the story because, well, that kind of ties into what I'm going to tell you about that building. So without further ado, let's take a look at the old Lafeyette School in Salt Lake City.
The hallway outside of my office hangs this beautiful picture of this amazing old school here in Salt Lake City, and I'd never seen this particular school. I always wanted to know more about it and its history. I think it's one of the most beautiful structures that I had seen. Come to find out, in September of 1904, the Lafeyette School was opened. It was a four-story structure located on the northwest hillside of State Street, just north of North Temple. I haven't been able to find the square footage for this original building. However, it did sit on like a 2.5 acre plot of land, and it did sit back from the road just a little bit, which I thought was interesting, the amount of space that it sat back from the road. I don't have much information about the school in the early years. There is some mention of 7th and 8th grade students attending this school. This is, of course, in the days before junior high schools. Keep in mind that the LDS Church had a college and prep school right across the street, basically. But this was, part of the school system, a public school. Anyway, beautiful school. However, on the night of January 20th, or I should say the early morning hours of January 20th, 1922, a fire of unknown origin gutted this beautiful structure. It's not known where the fire started in the building or what actually caused it. In those days, it could have been so many different things, and with the building materials that they used back then, well, buildings went up pretty darn quick, which is really sad because, as I said, to me, this is one of the most beautiful buildings out there. And as a typical January in Utah, of course, it's very cold. And trying to put water onto the fire to put it out, created a whole lot of ice. And you can see in these pictures all of these icicles and all of the frost created by them trying to put this fire out. It was really sad that it gutted the building so quickly. Again, the materials at the time that were used, the response of the fire department, back in those days, well, they did have firehouses nearby. I could imagine that within 2 to 3 minutes of it being reported, but it took somebody to report it in the middle of the night, and that's the problem, not having a watchman there at the school. And you can see the floors are absolutely gutted. It's just a shell that the upper floors absolutely destroyed in this beautiful, beautiful building. Here's fire investigators headed into the building to try and determine the cause, to try and see what kind of damage there was. And unfortunately, well, you can see the windows are all gone. The upper level is just absolutely decimated and completely destroyed. So what a sad ending for such a beautiful building. Here's some of the exhausted firefighters. See, notice all the frost on their jackets. Wow, that must have been one heck of a scene back then. One thing about Salt Lake City in those days, fire hydrants were readily available. So we did have a pretty decent fire system back then. But here you can see in the basement of the building some of the desks and how just terrible the water damage was, and the icicles are. It gives it really a kind of a surreal feeling. Although it does make one wonder that they did have this furniture that was still probably usable in the basement. Got to wonder whatever happened to that, if the district reused that or if they just sold it for scrap. Here's a picture from the North Temple area. Looking, you can see how far back that building sits and just the destruction of it. Really a sad, sad scene. Boy, this happened a few times in Salt Lake City back in those days. It's amazing how fire codes have changed so many things. Well, anyway, the building had to be destroyed, torn down. They needed to build something new. Kids were moved to temporary, some of the church buildings and whatnot nearby. And by January of 1923, a new building was erected just south of the old structure, right on the corner of North Temple. This building was about 37,000 square feet. And I guess it was 2.9 acres was the whole area that this particular building sat on. But it was built, as you can see here, just off of North Temple, so just down the hill from where the old building was. In the 1923-24 school year, the enrollment was 1,022 students. By 1930, it declined clear down to 709. Now, due to ever declining enrollment in the area, by the early 1940s, most of the building was being used to house other programs. University of Utah Extension, PTA groups, the Board of Education Museum, and even some of the district offices were housed here for a time. By the 1950s, the building was now being leased to the LDS Church for use as administrative offices. It was a missionary training center here in Salt Lake at one point in time. However, in 1968, it was sold, and shortly after that, in the mid-1970s, it was torn down and a parking lot took its place.